Okay, finishing up chapter 12 today. And we're in New Wave. In the early mid 1980s, we've heard from great artists like Joe Jackson and the Police, Eurythmics, Culture Club and Duran Duran, who were Culture Club and Duran Duran were both huge new wave artists who their music sort of brought them into the more mainstream pop family. Police started more new wave and became more straight on rock and roll. Um, but our next band, one of those great one hit wonders that came around, Kajagoogoo is their name, Too Shy, a huge new wave hit from '83, I believe. Give a listen, Too Shy. Kajagoogoo and their lone top 40 hit called Too Shy. The Human League was one of the new wave bands that stuck around for a little while. They had several big hit records in the States and in England. Don't You Want Me? Probably the biggest of the bunch, and it was their first major hit in America. Human League, new wave classic from the mid 80s. Human League, great band. Naked Eyes, another new wave band from Britain, and they did a remake of a song called Always Something There to Remind Me, which was written by our old friends from the Brill Building in New York, Burt Bacharach and Hal David. They wrote this song. It was recorded by lots and lots of different artists, but Naked Eyes did their own sort of new wave take on it in the mid '80s and had a pretty big hit in the States with it. Give a listen to Always Something There to Remind Me. Good tune, Naked Eyes. Simple Minds, another British band. They not from England, from Scotland, from Glasgow, Scotland. And Simple Minds had a few big hits in the States and in the UK. Definitely the biggest of all, though. Don't You Forget About Me, a new wave classic by Simple Minds. Simple Minds, a band that joins like Human League and Eurythmics as a band that produced some quality stuff over the period of a few years. Another such band, kingpins of the new wave movement, Pet Shop Boys. Great band from the early mid late '80s, and one of their first big hit in the states remained their biggest, called West End Girls. Pet Shop Boys. Classic classic keyboards behind it, that electric. West End Girls, Pet Shop Boys, great song. Next up, Aha, another new wave band, not from Britain. They came from Norway, and Take on Me was not their only hit, but it was their only major hit. It was a huge hit record. And not only was it big on the radio, it was enormously popular on MTV. It was one of those sort of watershed videos like Billie Jean, like Money for Nothing by Dire Straits, like a couple different uh, videos by Madonna. The video for Take on Me by Aha utilized a combination of live action and I guess you'd like evolutionary sketch, where you'd see something sketched in front of you and it would play out like that. It was a great video. It was very entertaining to watch. I'd highly recommend. Maybe I will go on YouTube myself and watch it again. But on the radio, the song did well regardless of the visuals. Take on Me by Aha, it really helped propel MTV, and the band experienced a huge number one hit. And this song, as much as any song I'm going to play for you, screams the 80s. Take on Me, Aha. Norwegian band Aha, Take on Me, their lone huge hit in the States. Uh, so, in the area of New Wave, I wanted to bring to your attention just a couple of American bands. It wasn't purely a British phenomenon. There was that second British wave that happened, British invasion that happened in the early 80s. It was nothing compared to the first. If you remember in the 60s, in 64, 65, when the Beatles and the Stones and the Kinks and Jerry and the Pacemakers and Herman's Hermits, when they came along, they dominated the charts in ways that had never been done before. In the 80s, the top artists of the 80s were still American. You know, Michael Jackson, Madonna, Prince, Daryl Hall and John Oates, Lionel Richie, Billy Joel. These were Huey Lewis and the News, John Mellencamp. These were the really huge Springsteen. These were the huge artists of the 80s. And the British groups and the British acts that came along, with the exception of, I would say, Duran Duran and Culture Club, they came along and they had a hit or two or three or four, but then they kind of either went away or their popularity waned, in part because new wave became old wave at some point, and that style of music was no longer in vogue. But a couple of American bands, the B-52s and Devo, were very prominent on the new wave scene. Now, the B-52s were not just a new wave band. They started in the mid 70s in Georgia, and the B-52s, a combination actually of novelty kinds of records and a bit of disco, a bit of new wave, and even a little bit of funk with some little country twinges and straight up rock and roll. The B-52 is a very eclectic group. Devo, similar, although they were more straight up new wave, but Devo, they became known in the States for the song I'm going to play for you called Whip It, which was a novelty record. It was a good record, but it was a novelty record. And they became so well known for that that a lot of people think they're a one hit wonder. The reality is they created a lot of great music that lived in the shadow of the reputation of Whip It. So here is, back to back, Rock Lobster by the B-52s and Whip It by Devo, two great American contributions to the new wave scene. And now, Whip It. Whip It by Devo. Before we leave the new wave notion, Tears for Fears, another duo that from Britain, great music. They had several huge hits in the States, Shout and Head Over Heels, Sowing the Seeds of Love. But the best was their first. Everybody Wants to Rule the World, Tears for Fears. Great song. It's a great song. Okay, our last aspect of things that I want to talk about today. There's four female vocalists that I want to mention: Cyndi Lauper, Madonna, Whitney Houston, and Janet Jackson, for different reasons. Cyndi Lauper was sort of the top new artist of '84. She came around. She was big for really the rest of the decade. She never quite lost her popularity, but she was big, active on the charts for the next few years. She's gone on to great stuff. In fact, she won a Tony a few years back for composing music for Kinky Boots Broadway show. So Cyndi Lauper, her debut hit, #2 smash called Girls Just Want to Have Fun. Madonna. Madonna debuted on the American charts in earnest in '84, and one of her first hits still ranks as one of her best, a song called Borderline. Give it a listen. Madonna. Now, Madonna ranks to me as one of the most important women in rock history. It's not that she was an amazing singer. It's not that she was an amazing songwriter. I know she was trained as a dancer. I don't happen to think she's an amazing dancer. I, however, am not a dancer, so I shouldn't be saying that, but I don't. I get to say that. But as an artist, as an influencer, long before the term was utilized by the internet, um, Madonna was unparalleled. And the popularity of her records, the popularity of her look, the popularity of her attitude, the popularity of her brand kicked open doors for women that have stayed open for now almost 40 years. And I'm going to play for you Madonna's first #1, first of 12, I think she had, called Like a Virgin. I say I'm going to play for you. You're going to play for yourself. Like a Virgin, Madonna, huge hit record. As big a star as Madonna was, and she was huge through the 80s and the 90s. And like I say, as far as women in rock and roll and their importance to the sort of shift of pop culture, Madonna is one of those rare artists. And she is the biggest woman in rock history, period, when you sort of take her chart achievements and records sold, all of that. The other woman that came out at roughly the same time, a few months after Madonna, was a woman named Whitney Houston. And what Madonna did for the sort of business and pop culture aspects, Whitney Houston did for artists of color in general, for female artists of color in particular, and just for anybody who could sing. Whitney has a voice that ranks with Aretha, and that's saying something. I think you know from me. Whitney took a page from the Billie Holiday, Sarah Vaughan, Ella Fitzgerald songbook, and again kicked down that door. And artists from Rihanna to Katy Perry to Pink to Beyonce to Mariah Carey to Toni Braxton to Alicia Keys probably wouldn't have gotten as big as they did had it not been for the door kicking of Madonna and Whitney Houston. This is Whitney. She had 7 #1 records in a row, something nobody else in rock history has ever done. And she did it. And this was one of them, Saving All My Love for You. And quickly, another key female artist from the mid 80s, Janet Jackson, Michael's sister, and yet she stepped out of his shadow and became a superstar in her own right. Quite frankly, statistically, she's right there, right next to him. That's how big she was. What Have You Done For Me Lately? Janet Jackson's first huge solo hit. Give a listen. I'll see you next time.